about that experience. Talk about being a birth worker. I'm taping it, so I'm going to post it in the group so that the folks who weren't here can see it later. What to you, it's in your experience, the folks who've done births, even if it's only one, what was the best thing about it, the worst thing about it, and what did you learn from it?
Well, I can go. I think about the births that I attend regularly, that I've attended in the past. I wonder if my clients ever think of me, but I surely do think of them and the babies that they've had. And for me, doula work is a very spiritual experience. And I'm not very religious, but there's definitely something about birth work that is just such a strong spiritual energy and helps me feel more connected with that side of myself. And I think of one particular birth that I feel like I've done most of my births at hospitals, though I have attended home births, which I love. um, and the hospital births, it's hard. That spiritual energy really clashes with the vibe and the energy within the hospital, and I feel like oftentimes it's just so jarring and it's really hard. And I remember one particular birth. um, I had a mama who was there with her husband and her mom, and this was an immigrant family. And there was like a group of doctors that all came in and were basically like, they were freaking out because this and that didn't look good, and oh sorry, this and that didn't look good, and basically they were like the they were just giving them like the worst kinds of prognosis. And long story short, like, the family was scared. The family was really scared. And I honestly, in my heart of hearts and from what I've been trained about, I felt like that, in my humble opinion, was just not, I couldn't understand what they were worried about. Like, to me, this was a very natural, normal birth, and this woman was just going to have her baby. And so because they were freaking out and crying, I just felt called to say something. And these words did not come from me, but I said, your baby's going to be born before the sun rises. And those words just came out of me. And, right when she was getting ready to push, the doctors were still arguing and everything. This was hours later, and they had come back and convened and were arguing to the side while the mom was about to push his baby. So I said, okay, that's when I talked about this during one of the meetings, but I leaned in close to her and I said, okay, you're going to have this baby. I want you to listen to the sound of my voice. Okay. Focus on my voice. And I quietly turned around and I said to the doctors, I said, okay, she's having her baby now. And they just were so flustered and were trying to get it together and break the bed and get all the things that they needed. And she had her baby. And as they put the baby on her chest, I was standing next to her and I looked up the window and I said, look up at the window. And the first rays of the sun were just starting to rise up.
That's great.
And she just had this big, beaming, beautiful smile on her face when she saw that, and the sun shining on her, new family that they had just made together.
Yeah.
So it's such a blessing. And that, I think about that birth often. And I did that birth with Tess, so this was quite some time ago. So yeah, that's what I think about when I think of doula work, for sure.
What were they concerned about? Do we know?
It's probably in my notes somewhere, but I think they were concerned about the baby's heart. They didn't like the reading on the,
On the
I'm not,
monitor? But the baby
yeah,
didn't seem to be worried about it.
no, the baby was born very healthy and happy, and the dad was so happy afterwards. He took me and Tess to go eat at IHOP.
That's great.
Because it was morning time, it was breakfast time, so
Grateful
after we,
parent.
helped mama breastfeed and everything, it was like, I have to eat some pancakes.
Celebratory pancakes. That's the way to roll. So that was your best thing about birth work, that memory. What's your worst thing about birth work?
The worst thing for me is that birth work can often be like a mirror to myself. And Samsara has always said this from the start, from when I first was like a baby doula. And she said, your clients are always gonna make you, anything you say to your client, you're gonna have to say to yourself. And so it's gonna make you think a lot about, a lot of self-reflection involved in that. And that's hard. It's good in a way, but it's also really, really hard. And I would say that aspect is challenging.
Mhm. Thank you so much, Anne. Who'd like to speak on this?
I'd like to go next. I might have to leave a little early too because it's getting close to bedtime.
All right.
Bedtime. I would love to speak a little bit about, like, for myself. I want to go to bed now. I know. About the difference between, like, I started attending births solo just as an independent doula, and then a few years later joined Shiphrah Circle and became an assistant to Samsara. And I think very soon doing the birth solo, that was really hard. And it was hard as a new doula because while I felt pretty comfortable at home births, I felt like I was definitely part of the team with the midwives. When I was in the hospital, that was not the case. And I did not feel fully, well, I could give, there were things I could do that were great for the client, of course. My client was very happy with my care. I felt a little bit more inadequate, like, oh, I know there's more here. I know there's more to this. There's more I could learn. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting spiritually, emotionally. It's exhausting physically to do this alone, and doing it together. Like, you have that other person that's seeing the same thing that you're seeing. You have that other person you can bounce off ideas with. You can spell each other for naps as needed. I love working in teams. I love working as partners. I really love working also with student doulas and kind of giving them, because it was so meaningful for me. Like, the doula I am today is because of because of my work with Samsara, hands down. And that was so meaningful for me that that's certainly something I want to give back. That was in my early doula career. That was certainly one of the best. The hardest was doing it alone, and the best was then finding Samsara and working together. And then as a parent, I will say there's just that logistical piece that's hard. And like, okay, what are you going to do about like, are you going to miss your kid's birthday? What are you going to do? There was one birthday where I was like running, like went to the birth. It was early labor. Okay, it's early labor. I'll go check on them, give a massage. Okay, now I'm going to my kid's birthday. Now, the labor's picking up. Got to leave my kid's birthday. And like that's hard. It's not an easy choice to make. So that wasn't yours. But those are a few things yeah.
Thank you, Mika. Anybody else? It's the best thing and the not so best thing.
I'll go. So to me, what I love the most about attending births is I love seeing a woman go through the process of like discovering her power and reaching her potential, and just witnessing that amazing transformational journey, and how each woman like navigates it her own way and has to discover her own path, and just being witness to that, and having like, it's an honor to hold that sacred space for her as she does that. And that's like, it's so beautiful to watch. That's definitely my favorite part. And even a woman who ends up with a C-section, like, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of love to undergo that major abdominal surgery for your baby, so just, that's what I love about it. hardest part, I would agree with Mika, is like the fatigue. If you don't like sort of manage your resources properly, like you don't make sure you get to bed early, you know, all the time, so that when that one night comes, like I've had some times when I didn't, and I'm like sleeping on my feet, you know, I'm dropping my head, and that is just the worst feeling. Like it hurts, and it's also, you're completely useless to your client at that point, and you know you screwed up and you have to figure out how to fix it. And that piece too of like the sacrifice, you can't be at your kid's birthday all the time. And oh my gosh, I remember it was my son's birthday, and I would always bring malasadas, which is like Portuguese donuts, to his class at the end of the school day on his birthday. That was like the birthday thing I did for my kids when they had school. And of course, like she goes into labor, and it's just that timing where it's like there's no way I'm gonna get. And I was I was in tears in the laundry room and called my husband at work and was like, you need to leave work right now and get malasadas to Nalu at school. And then like ran in to the birth, you know, but it was heartbreaking. And yeah, that's the hardest part. But also the other really hard part is like kind of what Christina was talking about. Like if you're at a hospital birth, and you know, the powers that be in the hospital, sometimes it's such a art and a fine skill to be able to sort of like counter all the little threads of power. Like there's this web of power that's going on there, and it's so hard, you know, and I've always worked on my own. So being in there, and you're just like this one little person, and there's this whole power structure, and they're like swooping things in this direction that you know they don't need to go in. And then the thing that I really, it just like it stabs me in the heart is when the doctors or the nurses or the caregivers in the hospital, they tell the client like their version of, oh, we had to whisk you away to that C-section because of this. And you're sitting there with more information going like, no, that's not really. But then when the family and the clients like clamp onto that because they need to believe that version of the story for their own peace of mind so they can go forward. And then, you know, I have this moment of like, okay, just close it down, shut it down, and let them have the story they need to have, because it's more important that they have a story they can live with than that they know my version of the story or whatever.
Well, I will say that I very much disagree with you on that. But I will say that they don't need to hear the version of the story. The way we prepare our clients, they already know when shenanigans are happening. And sometimes shenanigans happen in such a way that you can't back out of it, unless you're going to be like the mighty client we had recently, who after 4 days of Pitocin said F this and left the hospital.
Wow. Amazing.
Yes.
Queen.
But that's not, you know, that's rare that, you know, they do such a good job of scaring you. But this bomb was unbought and unbossed. And she was like, later, this is some crazy crap you're trying to do here. And I don't have any faith in you. I don't trust your advice. I'm going home. Have some more acupuncture. That's what she did. So, but that's like, you know, the first time that happened in over 1,000 births. So for the most part, the client is getting hit by a truck. They don't agree. I'm the doula that says we can leave here if you want to. But even that other client, she was like, what do I do? And I'm like, what if your choice is this? That is a choice that you have. It's a choice. Of all the other choices, there's a bunch of choices, and one of the choices is to get out of Dodge.
Yeah.
And so if they say, you know, if they say they can't do that or don't feel they can do that, then they know the train is coming to run them over. They get run over. They cry about it. And the most important thing I feel I can tell them at that point is that this is not about the failure of your body. This is the most important thing that I will always make sure a client knows, especially when it's shenanigans, which is most of the time, that's what it is. You know, once in a blue moon, I've seen cesareans that are actually necessary. The little kiddo was not going to come out without it. Actually, her mama, who was so brave, did end up having a C-section. It was necessary. Her body was not doing labor. We'll talk about that. Bye-bye, Mika. We'll talk about that because, you know, they don't tell in vitro moms that they might not go into labor because their baby's an in vitro baby, right? And Pitocin wasn't working for them. 4 days of Pitocin and she made like zero progress. And no, she was not going to have misoprostol. She said no. And no, she was not going to have all the other medications. She said no. She went home and had a week of acupuncture. It was a week of acupuncture and herbs. Nothing, no progress. So she went back and said, I want a C-section. So she had agency throughout. They did what she wanted done. So this is not a traumatized mom.
That's awesome.
Right? And I think that when people are being lied to in the moment, you can't tell them if they're gonna, if for the most part, our clients get it. They're just like, this is fucked up. I might have my next baby at home. But you know, there is that story that people have to tell themselves to get through that event. And then a month later, they might be available for more information. And I would check in with them to say, you know, there were some things that I saw at your birth. Are you available to hear? And if they say no, it's no. I've had moms say no and then call me 3-4 years later and say, you know, what did you want to tell me? Because they know. For me, reality has a very high value to me, especially around our birth. Yes, Akila. They know the truth, whether they're ready to deal with it at the moment or not. And I hold, when we do our closing ceremony with our clients, when we talk about the birth and we show them the pictures, I take 1 million pictures. And, you know, part of the normal birthing process is that the mom's going to forget a good chunk of what happened. This God is helpful that way, because sometimes you don't need to remember every little moment. We just need to go get our baby soul from the land of souls and come back. But when we're closing with a client, it's about a month after the baby's birth. And we go through the whole story and we show all the pictures. And the mom is always saying, I don't remember that. I don't remember that. Wow, you did that? Wow, my mom fed me that oatmeal? I don't even remember her doing that. Because I believe she's entitled to that information. It's like, it was her life. She did it. And women are so prone to be like thanking everybody, being so grateful for the doula and their husband, and they won an Oscar and they thank everybody, but they don't thank themselves for the hard work that they did. And it's a particular thing of mine where we want to be like, you know, all of our clients, every single one are like, oh, I couldn't have done it without you. And it's like, you would have had your baby. And I'm honored to help you. I'm honored that I helped you. And especially in a hospital setting, if we got a natural birth, for sure, my presence mattered. The odds were not likely that was going to happen without a doula in the room in most hospitals. But I still won't take that glory away from your mom, because I didn't push that baby out. I pushed my own babies out. And I brag about them on a daily basis. On a daily basis. But, you know, and she deserves to brag. Mama deserves to brag. Birthing person deserves to brag. You did that. And I'm honored to be your servant, which is why I have no problem with the word doula. So I'm a servant to the birth process. You know, So yeah, no critique of what you were saying, but just my opinion on what you were saying.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you so much, because even though I've been doing this for like 15 years, you know, there's still always things to learn and like new skills to build, you know, and I can tell from coming to these meetings that one of the skills that you really teach in this circle is learning how to work within that power structure to like dismantle some of the harm that it does. So thank you. Yeah, that's something I can work on and have courage.
I'm glad it was helpful, and I'm glad that you see it that way, because I think it really is, birth, in my opinion, should make us bigger women, bigger people, not lesser. And what I see too much of is the birth process crippling women.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even a rocky birth, even a disappointing birth, you can still roll through it with your dignity, with your pride, with your consciousness, and let them take that from you. That's my
Like that mom you were talking about, that's exactly it. Like I was saying, I love to see women coming to their full, you know, power, and she did that.
yeah.
No,
She
she had
rocked
to
my
take that.
world. I prayed so hard. If you follow me on Facebook, you see I pray for my clients all the time. I ask the whole birthing community to pray for all my clients all the time. And I personally think that does so much. All that positivity on them does so much. And I was just like, oh Lord, I was on the phone with my preceptors and they were breathing with me. And I was like, Lord, let her be rewarded. Let her be rewarded for this bravery, you know, because it's so hard not to buy the fear of everybody. And yeah, it's a thing. But you know, this mama had a really good diet. She had a great attitude. Have an in vitro baby though.
Well, I think that's a very great thing for her to look back on and know that she did all of that.
Exactly. She's not lying there regretting anything. That labor was not going to start. It really wasn't. Because my God, I was just like, and she had acupuncture before. I mean, she did everything. She was on herbs for days, 4 days of pit.
And she got her baby to 41 and 5.
They
She
wanted
got
to
herself a
induce her
nice,
at 36.
chunky baby, healthy.
That makes a
full
huge
baby.
difference. Yeah. Big difference. And I feel like oftentimes people don't appreciate it that much, that even if you can climb the hill a little further on, no matter what interventions come your way. And I know there's research that says that in some cases it doesn't matter, but I've always seen it matter. I've always seen it matter. As far as I'm concerned, it matters. If you're a few centimeters ahead, a little bit more effaced, anything
they
that
were
comes your way, I feel is you're gonna have a better outcome.
They were pushing her at 37 weeks.
36. What the first doctor wanted to section her at 36.
Yeah.
So she got herself a fully cooked baby past the due date. She had an almost 9-pound baby as opposed to a spindly little 7-pound baby or a 6-pound baby.
Has respiratory problems probably and all of that. Yes.
Yeah. And it's like, you know, oh, your placenta's going to explode. Your placenta's going to explode. Like, you know what? And more are we getting this, I swear to God, we're getting this fake ass science telling people that nutrition doesn't matter. Oh, it doesn't matter. Some placentas just explode for no apparent reason.
That's capitalism. That's all that is. Like
placentas absorbing plastics as well. So nutrition.
How about that?
Micronutrients.
How about that?
And
Why
That's
don't
scientific research? Let's talk about that. All the mini plastics.
They don't want to listen to that science.
Right. We don't want to talk about that.
we don't want to talk about that you have to start eating like a pregnant person when you're planning to conceive. And we don't want to talk about that if we want to be a mother one day or a parent one day, That means that we don't need to blow our 20s eating crap, doing every fad diet that comes down the pike, smoking crack and drinking beer. Because there's this fake thing in the culture that it's okay to just piss away your 20s.
Yeah.
That is some crazy bull crap. That's just so crazy I can't even imagine. Your most fertile time, you're gonna piss it away with all this stuff. The worst thing in the world is a teen mom. I'm like, you know what? My teen moms weren't running around having C-sections and all this drama. As long as you make sure a teen mom was fed up right and you dealt with the psychosocial, because of course there's a lot of psychosocial wackadoodle amazingness with teen moms, right? So yeah, she's fighting with her boyfriend, her mom put her out, then she's made up with her mother, then she's got finals in school, and then but if you can feed them up all the beautiful drama of being teenage mama, they birth like a dream. Not 3 days, you're not 2-3 days in the hospital with a healthy 17-year-old or a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old. You're not going to do that. So why don't we have it, we're talking about what Zaria is talking about capitalism. The reason why we don't encourage folks to have their babies earlier is that we don't have jobs for the 35-year-olds. So, we don't have a world that sustains 20-year-olds getting together to have kids and raising their kids. What job are they going to get to take care of their family? That's why we discourage it. Not because, and also companies like Google who will pay you to freeze your eggs so you don't get pregnant while you work for them. Google will do that for you. They're such great guys over there at Google.
I was working for one of their fertility clinics when they were doing that. Very interesting target marketing, if I must say.
Wow, I want to hear.
Very interesting target marketing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So they don't have to worry about folks going off on maternity leave and doing any of that clippity clap. And then you have to hope that those eggs work in the 10 years when you want to defrost them and try to use poor little things.
I remember those are the beer eggs and the going party hard eggs and the completely eating hot flaming Cheetos and soda and all that. That's that beautiful.
Especially with the open bar they provide on site.
Wow.
I'm exaggerating. I'm just saying all those offices have really crazy happy hours that are free.
No, that's real. That's real.
Because they're doing studies that the sperm count throughout the years, so like the past 20 years, has gone substantially down, and they attribute it basically to all like the plastic and all like the extra chemicals that are in the food. I think it's gone down like 40%.
The disposable diapers on baby boys has been linked to reduce sperm counts.
And micronutrient deficiency in the soil, producing food that doesn't have enough nutrients, and animals that don't get enough nutrients.
So many things.
Yeah, they've been studying the sperm at sperm banks, and they've seen it. They've seen the clear drop, a clear trajectory down towards the years, which they attribute to this. So it's not just assigned female at birth. It's it's all our bodies. All our bodies are being affected by this.
And a little girl, a little female human, is born with all the eggs it will ever have. And that's something that I have very tenderly shared with my grandchild when she was a little waddly thing. And it does determine, it helps her think about what she eats and how she lives. 50% of her future children are sleeping inside of her body right now. That's how we feel about that in our Catholic household. So half of her babies that she would like to have, which she has informed me to my great delight that she wants to be a mother one day. And so, yeah, you have to stop and think about how you nourish yourself and how you keep those little eggs all happy in there for when you want to make a baby with them. Find a nice person who has some sperm to help you have a baby. right? Now, why can't we, why can't we raise children up having that wonderful understanding of themselves? Why can't we have little boys wanting their bodies, including their sperm, to be healthy and vibrant? Why is this a problem? Because there's money to be made over the despair of people who are unhealthy. The sicker we are, the more the establishment makes money off of us. If we're sick and depressed and overweight and distressed, and there's all kinds of professions that are waiting to make money off of us. It makes me so mad. We digress from our point, but we are still kind of on point. I would like to hear more from folks who have done births, even if it's just one. What was the best part of that, and what was the worst part?
I'll go. Every time somebody says something, I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's the best. Oh yeah, that's the worst. I think there are so many bests. There are so many bests in supporting a family and in bringing a baby into the world, and certainly, like Tara talking about, the power, somebody seeing their power. And I think about our beautiful client Samsara, who gave her baby up for adoption. And she was phenomenal.
Beautiful birth. That was a beautiful birth.
Young person doing all she could to eat well and birth her baby totally naturally, to give her baby the very best, give this baby the very best for its life, choosing its parents very intentionally and birthing her baby very intentionally.
Yep.
And just when she when she was looking at pictures that Samsara had taken of her, and she's like, oh my God, I did that. Like, just that kind of swagger, like seeing that is one of the best, one of the best things, the awestruck, and if the partner's there, whoever the partner is, like, whether it's a mom or the other parent or your best friend, like, they're awestruck in this person's power, is like seeing that is like the best. That's something that I love, that it's like the best. And I think one of the things that is like the worst, which a couple people touched on, is like in the hospital environment in particular, the energy, the push for, against to the sacred, the not leaving space for the sacred, and really the thing that really just gets me and is the worst is like the abuse, like things that I see as like you were saying, Tara, also, what is like not the thing, there's a lot more, and it's just abusive. It's just like straight up a lie, straight up shenanigans.
Give an example.
So I'm like, I'm like, which example should I give? I mean, there's definitely been some things around medication that I think is a really big thing. And I think is maybe a bigger conversation to talk about what drugs the hospitals are pushing on people, in particular tributaline, which is, you're trying to get somebody into labor and you give them a drug that stops labor from preterm labor. That makes no fucking sense. But the example that I want to give is not that one, although I'm saying that one also, is there was a birth recently this incredible family who pushed back, this mom who pushed back, who told her nurse, like, no, she didn't want Pitocin. They did nipple stimulation for a long time, and she was having consistent contractions. She got her and her partner got, you know, to almost 10 centimeters with nipple stimulation, because they had one awesome nurse and then a series of horrible people.
Yeah.
And she pushed back, and the doctors, you know, she tells the nurse, her new nurse, no. So the nurse goes and tells the student midwife. The student midwife comes and she tells the student midwife no. So the student midwife goes and gets the supervising midwife, and she tells the midwife no. And the midwife is like, well, you need to do this. And, you know, she, when she's pushing, she's trying to figure out pushing, and she's, you know, she's on an epidural after multiple days of laboring. Her baby was in a funky position and was not easily coming out of the funky position. And the midwife looked at her and was like, oh, well, you know, we're going to have to get the forceps. We're going to, you know, we're going to have to use forceps on you. And when she finally started making, or when she was making significant progress the whole time, and when she started making significant progress in the midwife's eyes, the midwife turned to me and giggled. Well, sometimes you just have to threaten them with forceps to get them to, and I wanted, I was like, it's a damn good thing I'm wearing this mask.
They gave that mother pit.
Pitocin. She was almost 10 centimeters. She just had an anterior lip.
They gave her pit for an anterior lip.
And the baby, and I mean, my observation of the labor is the baby was in a funky position. And even though she was on an epidural, she had a lot of mobility, and she was very much like, okay, let me try another position. Let me try another position. Let me move my body. And she was doing a lot of things to move the baby. But also, her body was needing more time, and they weren't going to give her more time.
Yep.
If they had given the baby more time, the baby was working on it slowly but surely. Her and her partner and her baby were working on it.
And we're talking
Because shift change is coming. It's almost, you know, 7 a.m.
Centimeter left to go. An anterior lip is like half a centimeter.
Yeah. And so the blatant threatening, the lying, like it wasn't her intention to use forceps. Probably they just take her to get a C-section.
Yeah, and then that's the whole thing. Who do they have in the hospital who knows how to use forceps anyway?
Yeah. But let me tell you the scariest thing. Let me tell you the scariest thing I can do to your body and to your baby. That is the thing that I hate the most. That is the thing that just is outrageous. And, you know, in the moment, I texted Samsara all the curse words and was like, I mean, you know, Mika was talking about being with another doula, and being with another doula, like I also attended traumatic births before having a co-doula, and then like the difference of being in the room with another co-doula is huge, and I can't wait until that can fully happen again. But I'm so grateful that I'm there, and I can be texting with Samsara at 3 a.m, 4 a.m, 5 a.m, like, do you know the shit that these people are trying to pull and are pulling and bullying our client? And I can just be like, fuck. And then when I look at the client and she's there and her partner is like wide-eyed, you know, they're feeling the anxiety, they're feeling the lack of spirituality in their space. And I can just look at them with so much love, in part because I could say all the things in the text message, in part because I could just like cuss it all out.
Mm-hmm.
But to just be like grounded in love in that moment. And then later, you know, when we visited her, saying like, well, how, you know, how did you feel? Because she saw and she was saying no, but she's also working really hard and bringing her baby and doing a lot of things. And then to let her know, like, yeah, like that was intense. There was some upsetting things. And they said some things to you that weren't appropriate.
Yeah, and you know, it's also really satisfying to help clients write letters and complain and make phone calls to the medical board and report people.
Yeah.
And it's all about doing that because those people get away with that.
Yeah.
They get away with treating people like that. And if it doesn't mean anything, that letter sits in that person's file. You write to the medical board, that sits in their file.
Yeah, and especially if some, like I've seen it like as a student midwife where I'll read in the chart and it said some terrible incident that happened with a previous provider in that same hospital, whether it was the provider or the student provider, whomever it was, and I can read what happened, and that is really enlightening, and then I can better understand where they're coming from and why they are feeling the way they're feeling right now. So definitely, for sure.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. I mean, you know, help clients prepare for court. You know, I've had clients sue doctors. I've had clients sue doctors and win. Because Samsara takes lots of pictures. That's why they don't want us up in there. And that's why you can't take video.
Yeah.
But, you know, you stand there with the camera and you're taking pictures like this, almost as good as video. Especially when something funky starts to happen, I start taking pictures.
Writing down names, taking a picture of the board.
We want to do that anyway.
Yeah.
You come in the room, you take a picture of the board. When the shift changes and they all put their names on the board, you take a picture of the board.
I write down everybody's names too, like at least the providers' names.
Yep.
Right.
And if they're doing really well, yeah, I know Samsara said like, oh, that's a good provider, write down their names so that we know who that person is, you know.
And we want to encourage our clients to write thank you letters to the doctors who did well, and the midwife who was sweet, and the nurse who was helpful.
Yes.
And to write to the, just the same, it's not all like bragging on them, but you know, if you're doing your job well, you should get praise for it. And if you haven't done your job well, you get censured for it. That's the way it is. But when we have a just like police and other groups, if they aren't held accountable, people do some amazingly bad things. If they don't feel that they can, if they feel like they can do whatever they want, and they have that false power. You know, I really think a lot of people choose obstetrics because they know they can get away with doing horrible things to other people's bodies.
Yeah.
And get paid really well for it.
Yeah. Yeah, UCSF has had some really, the last couple.
They have gone, I have lost all respect for that facility.
Some really challenging.
I'm really not happy with that. It took a long time for me to, when people, you know, do you recommend a hospital? And my answer always was no. Have a home birth. See you later, Jesselyn. We're gonna wrap up in a little bit anyway.
Bye.
And then, you know, things started to really shift at UCSF, and we had some amazing births with the midwives. I still think you're better off working with the midwives than you are working with the OBs, who are definitely cut happy and drug happy. But and then we had this horrible experience with a room full of midwives doing horrible medicine, you know. So I'm back to saying, let's have a home birth. Do the GoFundMe. I'll be the first one to give you $20. Let's let's just not even do this because this stuff is crazy, you know? Go to San Francisco General. But then they changed the rules now that some insurances are not accepted by General. So you can't go to the public hospital. You can't go to the county hospital with your insurance. What is that about? Again, you know, the big hospitals making sure that they get the money funded to them. And the county hospital can accept Medi-Cal. If you get hit by a truck and you got brought to the county hospital, they have to treat you. But you can't just go, and that's a relatively recent change because that's something that I would do. I've always been a very gangster doula. I'm very gangster. So my attitude is, okay, you're not happy with these other hospitals, then you can walk up into General in transition. They will have to deliver your baby. That's a straight up gangster move, you know? And now, but then families have to consider that because they may end up the insurance not covering it, and then, you know, many thousands of dollars in debt behind their birth, and that's a consideration that they have to look at. You know, it's just really horrible. Like, why can't you deliver at the county hospital? With all the nice midwives who care about infant mortality, who actually give a darn about infant mortality. Highland and SF General, that's got it for that. Anybody else want to have one more share of something amazing about birth, something troubling about birth before we close?
I wanted to share I had 2 clients who were given those, your body failed. And so we just had to do the cesarean talk. And I asked them, okay, well, did you get your health record? What were the specifics? Did you ever take a look at your chart? You know, what specifically was it? Because this was both their babies after having that first experience. And both of their babies, one was 9 and one was 5. So it had been a while since they entered down that road because they had believed that something was wrong and it wasn't clear. And so one decided, hey, I'm going to do a hospital birth. The other one was like, absolutely not. I'm doing a home birth. And seeing and just.
Oh, no.
Hello?
You,
okay, there we go.
Okay, there you are. You were.
Technology, they're hating because we're speaking truth on here. Don't be doing that, Zoom.
That's right.
I don't know where I left off, but pretty much so. Hospital mom, that's how we're gonna do hospital birth. It was beautiful, and why I just still have faith, and we're just gonna keep pushing, and we are gonna make change. We are gonna make impact. It was at Altabates. I hadn't had a very good experience with Altabates, and right, especially discrimination around. Yeah, one of the clients that was HIV positive, they just.
Oh no.
Woo, I wrote a lot of letters, but it was, yeah. But going in, hey, new situation, new baby, new birth, new pregnancy. We actually got a great team of midwives that allowed her and left her alone for 4 days. And it was some other things that were holding on, but baby needed to move around the scar tissue. That's what was taking so long. And I know it's not a thing you hear, but I hear them. I hear the little ones when they're in the bellies. And so that kind of helps me to guide, you know, what mom needs to do if she's not tapped in. And so pretty much it was a lot of movement. She had a lot of scar tissue. She was also a bit on the heavier side, and just the movement in general was already difficult for her. So, but she did it. I didn't do anything with hold space. She did it. She spoke to her baby. She didn't have a partner present the whole time. It was just me and her pretty much. But the staff, for whatever reason, we only had one bad apple nurse, but everyone else just allowed her body to progress. They just, hey, I just wanted to check in and see, but vitals are still looking great. Continue to do it. Continue to do it. They praised me. That's never happened ever. Like directly, like it's happened after. Oh, okay, thank you. You've been such a help this time. But more of just like, thank you for being here. Okay, we're gonna keep the lights off, and you got the vibe going, and we're just gonna step out. Oh, hey, they all introduced themselves. It was beautiful, right?
Wow.
Forever.
That's
But
a
it's happening
bait.
more.
That's
On that, and I usually don't, but it really was a great experience for her. And so at the end of it, she finally was able to say, you know what, you were right. I actually believe, I kind of believed it, but there's not anything wrong with my body. I could have been able to do this, first time around. Same with home birth. Home birth, she was 4 hours. 4 hours. She was comfy, cozy, and in her space. And she said that was the same, with her first birth. And she didn't know why, for whatever reason. Heart rate was fine. She remembered all of that. She remembered vitals being normal, baby still picking up on monitor. And for whatever reason, when she started pushing, oh, stop pushing. We need an emergency cesarean with no explanation.
wow.
And so, yeah, but she did a home birth in a water birth. And her husband caught, their second baby girl. And I just love seeing women break the molds of what they've been told or not told, and just go with their, with their mind and their spirit. So those are awesome.
Mighty mama.
Yeah.
I'm so
And I don't want to end on the worst. So can we just keep it high? We know horror stories later time.
This is, yeah, I'm totally with you on that.
Okay.
I just wanted to add one little tiny tidbit, just because from what I've been hearing from different folks, for what it means also to me to be a doula, is that sometimes as a doula, I have been made to feel invisible within the hospital setting. Or like with every word I say, it's like swimming against the current, and it was just so strange for me when I was getting my license as a nurse and I did my first round at L&D, that suddenly, like, everybody was taking, this young student nurse who had all this useful information, and everybody was just like asking me questions and going along, and the resident asked me for help, and it was just like, oh, like they see me, like I'm still the same person, I know the same information, it's just there's something.
Now you're a member of their club.
Right.
Yeah, like they hear doula and they're like, oh, I don't know. It's like immediately like this scary thing, but it's like, well-trained doula is a wonderful asset, I think. And, it's sad that they fear us when.
Well, they're taught a bunch of silliness about doulas. And the deal too is that, and I tell my students this all the time, if you've been a doula a few years and you've got a nice bunch of vaginal physiological births in your belt, you will have seen more of that than the average OB. And so you've been to a place that they've been told doesn't exist. And there's a fear of that. Because they spent all that money.
Right.
And y'all, went to a 3-day workshop. And my original doula training was a year, but still. And it's all about, and then being a midwife, you're seeing birth at its most beautiful. You're seeing free range birth. And you know that no two women are going to do this the same way. No two people are going to birth the same. People birth with their deep history. They birth with their ancestors. They birth how their tribe births. They birth how their body was able to be nurtured. Were they able to get hold of that darn protein, those veggies, and that water? Were they stressed out? Were they loved? That's how the woman is going to birth. Her story is right there in front of you. Her life is right there in front of you. And so we're just gonna go ahead. What are you gonna say?
That was my worst experience, or seeing how neglected the birthing person is on a regular basis from themselves, from their loved ones, seeing where they don't have support where they thought, and then seeing them like reestablish those trauma bonds is that I think is probably that dark side, I would say, of birth.
Definitely.
Because then that's baby
Definitely.
who's growing in that, you know what I'm saying? It's
Definitely. We get to see the whole story of humanity doing this work. You know, it is the most satisfying work that a human being can ever do, in my humble opinion, hospital shenanigans aside. We get to see human beings at their absolute best most of the time. We see people stepping up to the plate or trying to. And we help them. And we will be nothing but blessed for it. I know. I've received so many blessings because in my humble belief system and helping God's babies. What is more noble than that? And those beautiful mamas and papas and aunties and uncles and grandmas. I love me some grandmas. They're crazy. So on that happy note, we ended high, Akila. Yes, ushering universal greatness. That's so true. I totally agree with that. So I thank you guys for the input. When this is processed, it'll be posted in the group. Folks who were here can at least hear the conversation. I think it's a good conversation for us to have for our doulas in waiting and our younger doulas. And you know, in a few months, I'll ask the story again after y'all have done some births, so we can all spread the joy and love. So everybody's going to have a great week, right? I'm going to see everybody next week.
peaceful dreams all.
Buenas noches.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Night.
Samsara.
What?
Um
Hold on, let me turn off the recording because you don't need to record it.